His nostrils here. Yeah. Somebody told me this, and I've been investigating it for 50 years. It's always proved true. That if you get within this distance of a cat's nose with your finger, he's forced to smell. Not too close, not too far away. Even a little nervous, you put it there. It's just, it's an automatic reaction. Yeah. Lion tamers. Any lion tamers here? Okay. They know. There's a certain distance with lions, you can bang your gun at them, crack the whip, and they'll hop around, do this and that, and okay, and so on. But a certain distance, if you get too close, these territorial instincts kick in, and they cannot control themselves, even though they're being threatened, being shot, or anything else, and they'll kill you. So lion tamers know this. There's a certain distance that they have this reaction. So anyway, different species, different reactions, different eternal experiences. So his point is that you take cats. Cats are territorial. And the usual size of people's houses is not big enough for cat territory. So they end up fighting each other and growling and howling and biting each other. So what they learn to do is that one cat will patrol a certain time, other cat will patrol another time. And they'll communicate, they'll leave messages by urinating places like that. Those who learn to cooperate. So if that becomes our basic philosophy in life, it's going to make the world a whole lot different than what it is now. So these are very big, prominent people. He's a candidate for Nobel Prize. And they like Carl Jung. They met Jung, and Jung is like the highest, culture they come in contact in terms of Western culture and philosophy. Prabhupada says it's true. So he was developing his ideas, and again, he had from previous life, he was basically on this level of what we would call Hiranyagarbha. One person is absorbed in his sense objects. Not even aware of his senses. Sometimes if you drink enough, you get that same level. Maybe you haven't experienced this. You're just sitting there like, rubbing your hand on something and watching the clock go around in the bar like that, And after some time you realize what you're doing is there's a little nail sticking out of the bar and you're actually cutting your finger like that. That's what you're enjoying, Or a camel enjoying chewing on thorns, okay? Okay, you can be in that level like a bacteria or something, absorbed in the sense objects. It's whap, whap, come to your senses, man. Oh, okay, yeah. So now I'm aware of my senses, Yeah, but then still, whatever comes in front of me, good or bad. Okay. What's the next level? Sense objects, senses. The mind, yeah. And Descartes, very famous. He was looking at the fire. I'm not the fire. I'm not the eyes that watch the fire. And very, very famous Latin phrase. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But Buddha says, yeah, come back behind that. Yeah. But behind the manas, the mind, which is thinking, feeling, all these kind of things, is the intelligence, the perspective, the attitude. Like that. So we were discussing this last night. And so Jung, just by his birth, his karma, he was already, as a child, was already like experiencing that there's this, so finally you come to this point in Buddha, you can begin to appreciate the integrated nature of things. And your intelligence is connecting up and analyzing things and putting them like that. And the perceptual level is direct experience. So the Virat Rup, the hands and legs everywhere, the priest, the princess, these are all a part of the Virat Rup. They're psychological things, bodies which we get. So above that is Hiranyagarbha, which is like there's a seed behind it. Not just the forms, but there's kind of a seminal potency, which is allowing all this to happen. And funny, Paramatma is a soul, a person, hand of God and things. Then finally you realize who's connected to them, who's connected to the hand, like that. What's behind the hand. But at a very high level, again, professional gamblers, they're in touch with this. They know when to throw the money, when to, so many people, doctors, psychologists, it's an intuitive, introspective. And there are techniques, even in the West, there are techniques for developing your introspective abilities, intuitive abilities, like that. Able to see whole gestalt at one time, how it's all integrated at one time. Then it may take you 2 days to get it written down in some kind of linear form where people can read it and understand it in a linear form. So Jung was kind of born like that, but there was no society, no association, no environments. He was struggling with these things himself. He went into medicine, and he was reading different things. Again, if you want to understand all of Western philosophy and stuff, You're satisfied from this psychological point of view. Then Jung is an Acharya. He went through it all with such honesty, courage, like that, and so on. The Mithra cults of Rome, the alchemists and Paracelsus and Magnus. And this is not where we are now. We think we've developed a very rational view. There are many big choices that were made, not by different people, about how we're viewing the world. And it's not guaranteed this is the best way to view it. So as he was developing, he got in with the psychiatric movement and psychology, and they were developing techniques like free association, ink blots and stuff to try and get to people, and they were having good results. People were getting into the subconscious mind, trying to map it. Then he met, Freud, and Freud was already on this level, and so they talked. When they first met, they were supposed to talk for maybe half an hour, but Freud canceled all of his appointments, sent them back to the madhouse. And for 6 hours straight, they were talking about their experiences. And Freud was maybe about 20 years older than Jung or something. But Jung was also accepting synchronicities and supernatural phenomena. One study, something like, I know what it is, something like 50% of all white males have had some kind of psychotic breakdown. If we look at it, we wouldn't say psychotic breakdown, we'd say mystical experience. But for example, there was one lady, Alexandra Crisafulli, and she was a real estate agent in Berkeley, for us, for the temple and our houses. And we had this association, and Berkeley is a very liberal place, mental place. So I was coming back from the bank, I was a treasurer, and I crossed the street, Telegraph Avenue, 4 lanes, and she cut across all 4 lanes and just parked the wrong direction and hopped out of her car and ran towards me. Hanumat Swami! Hanumat Swami! Okay, hi, Alexander, what's happening? Last night, okay. So she had a girlfriend, who had gone to work with the Peace Corps in Central America, and she was very happy with it, and she came back, and she'd been renting a little loft, room in a house, like an attic type place. And so Alexandria and her were putting everything away so it would go into permanent storage. And that's the night before they had a last dinner together, and Alexandra was sitting with her and looking at this beautiful painting on the wall and describing what a beautiful painting, how it's really caught, Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And before, her friend had been talking about where she was and what it was like and all those experiences. And then Alexandra looked at her friend, and her friend was looking at her. Alexandra says, "What's wrong?" She said, "What do you see?" And she looked over, and it was a completely different painting. It was always trees and this parrots and this waterfall. And that's what she was describing. She was describing the waterfall and all this kind of stuff. And she looked back, and it was the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco there and stuff. And so she kind of fell off her chair, and her friend grabbed her. And her friend said, "What's even doubly confusing is because the scene you were describing is exactly the scene I see outside my window in Nicaragua, like that. Exactly the scene I see there." So these things are common. But again, if she didn't have my association, she just would have forgot about it. When you wake up, you have a really interesting dream. Unless you write it down or something like that, within a few minutes, a few seconds, you won't be able to remember it. Even if you want to, you just won't be able to remember it. You've got to go over it and catch it and so on. So these experiences are like that. They're just ephemeral, with the association and everything else. And so on. So this is, Jung was experiencing this and trying to codify it and put it into some organized system. And he developed his own ideas. And so he was experiencing that certain thoughts appear in the attic. He said, in the attic, I think this, I think that. In the Tavistock lectures, the general atmosphere was we had World War I. It was a really terrible event, terrible experience. But it won't happen again because we have so many different economic relationships and all these agreements, and we're intelligent to do that again. And he said, no, that's all happening in the attic. He said the real motivation is in the heart. Indriya, senses, manas, thinking, buddhi, in the heart. And we're not even usually conscious of this. Sometimes we're conscious of our thoughts and we try and control them. But meditation is not what you think. One phrase. Meditation is not what you think. It's being able to enter into this lower level, change the attitude, the perspective on the basis on which you think. So he was coming to these different processes by nature and some association. So, so he was talking about these things that he said, in Germany, for example, there's this whole, it's starting to come again. He said that the blonde beast is waking up like that. He said, even when I go there, I just feel like these things about, Deutschland über alles and all these things, and very archetypal images. You have like Wagner and Nietzsche, and they would all. Thus spoke Zarathustra. This is one of the biggest classics in the West. And Jung also sprach Zarathustra. Zarathustra is the archetypal figure from Zoroastrian culture. So Nietzsche and these guys, they had access to these things. They were looking at them in their worldview. Our worldview wasn't kind of supreme at that time. So he had this whole thing about thus spoke Zarathustra. And he has these things he says and so on, and I love him who sends golden words before his coming, who, when the dice fall in his favor, thinks, am I a cheater? Very nice fundamental things that really seem higher in life and motivation and so on. And then finally Zarathustra comes and sees all this modern world with like mechanism and linear thinking and all this kind of stuff and planning, and how they've lost their heroic and epic views of the world. And so he's leaving and he gives his final thing, his final statement to the people. And he says, there's a great cloud hanging over the modern world. And I am like the raindrops just falling on you now, like that, But the Overman is coming. Der Übermensch. But the Overman is coming, and the Overman is the lightning. Okay, that's a very... So Hitler came along looking at all this and said, Wir sind die Übermensch. We have come, and we are the Overman. Like that. The Third Reich, the 1,000-year Reich. So it was motivated by very intense, what's the guy? Haeckel. He was a German philosopher, biologist. He wrote a book called, I think it was called The Mysteries of the Universe. And had Nobel laureates participating. It sold like 100,000 copies, which at that time was big, like that. And he was describing what is life and everything else. And one of his conclusions was we should have, genocide. Certain races and so on are a drag on our evolution, and we should exterminate them. So he was directly preaching genocide. But he was just a philosopher. But then one German politician, Adolf Schicklgruber, took it up and made it into actual political process. And during the process, he changed his name from Adolf Schicklgruber to Adolf Hitler. And that was behind it. And if you read the history of World War II, it's unbelievable how many people died and suffered. Unbelievable. And all because of ideas. Ideas. It may not seem like much, but that's where it starts. It comes down, and certain ideas then catch people, and usually they catch them through these iconographic things like that. You have ideas, okay, intellectual, but when it comes to an archetype, an icon, and a movie and stuff, and then it's just like it catches people. So it was his comment to these people that you're saying there's going to be no world war, but even when I'm there, I'm just caught in this heroism and these things and everything else, this guiding images. So we say the same thing. You're chanting Hare Krishna, okay, you can chant, you can hear, but it has to come to Shmarnam, meditation, contemplation. Without that, it's still superficial. And different levels of meditation, contemplation. It has to be there. In our literature, we're describing this, our process, our thing. So the idea is to take advantage of this tremendous tradition. Our tradition has so much to offer people like that. Not the only one. It's very good, very practical. And talking about these people, the followers of Carl Jung and so on, which again is not everybody. There are like a fair number of people who can appreciate these things. So, what is the community? I'm talking to people who are interested in this kind of thing. So I started investigating. Is there anybody who's still following Carl Jung or not? There's several magazines. Spring is the oldest. There's what's the one from London? The London Journal of Psychoanalytic Philosophy or something. About 3-4 big journals still publishing articles. And they're taking Jung's ideas and developing them and his techniques. He was doing a lot of art. like visual art. He would have his patients drawing pictures and analyzing and looking at them, and you can show how people can express themselves, how to get in touch with the subtler aspect and deal with that. But he said you can do anything. He also accepted dance and music. Some of his clients developed that. From our point of view, the hierarchy of the arts is the subtlest, most subtlest music. After that comes dance, and then comes visual art, and so on. And so if you can deal with people on a level of acoustics and singing and stuff, you can get a much more potent communication with them, and so on. Yeah. And we see, how much do people pay for a big concert? How much do tickets at a big concert cost? And people, because it's just, you can take your mind to someplace else. One time we were invited to our restaurant in Lima, maybe about like 3 times this big. It was in, Miraflores, the restaurante. But yeah, big. So we were invited there. He said, well, how can we improve it? And I said, the first thing you have to do is to stop and listen. Right? At lunchtime, and there's always like this kind of roar of noise going on, and people banging pots. So that's the first element in the situation. Sunday feast, okay? People are taking prasadam. Always get the music going before you start distributing prasadam. And then it creates a certain ambience. Because of the sound, then comes touch, right? Tactile thing. Music will create a certain rhythm. It'll create certain tonalities. It's heavy metal. You're trying to eat prasadam, So you should pick out some heavy Bengali, some nice dinner music like that. So, So then first the sound, okay, so then they put doors on the kitchen. You hang up some tapestries on the wall, and the conversations become isolated. Then start playing the kind of music you want. And usually for a restaurant, for lunch music, you want a little bit like movement, so people come and eat their lunch and get out. Turn over. Because for dinner music, it's longer. They're going to pay a lot more. They come to stay longer. Okay, and so on. So see, music is the first thing. Sound is the first element. Then after that, touch. Then after that, vision or fire. So we see based upon touch, texture. Every visual experience has a texture, right? And every texture behind it has spatial orientation. It's a big area. It's a big, this is basic Vedic philosophy of nature, science. From this you get architecture, music, what else? Political science, everything else comes from the basic understanding of the elements and how they work. Our medicine, everything. It's very practical. When you get into it, it's very practical. It's not that Western science doesn't do anything, but it's based upon really screwy kind of basis and the way they're doing stuff and so on. So it's kind of limited. And the broader perspective of why you're doing it. Who benefits from modern science? Pharmaceutical companies. Yes. White, middle-aged males. It may have changed, but some years ago we did a study. The communications, the medicine, all the technology, defense, white, middle-aged males were the people who are really getting all the benefits out of it. Well, science is for everybody. No, it's like somebody's paying money. Big Nobel laureate was the guy Francis Crick, his name now. Anyway, he was Nobel laureate. He said, all of my generation, we started doing science because it was high ideals. Science will tell us what is life, in suffering, who we are, and there'll be great adventures like that. Maurice Wilkins, yeah. He said, but now, I'm shocked because I discovered basically 70% of all science is being funded by the military-industrial complex. How to kill other people, how to cause distress. He said, now scientists, you give them some interesting problem and long-term funding, they'll do anything. There's no any longer any high perspective in it. But that's what makes the difference and so on. That determines what kind of science you're going to do, everything else. So ultimately it's not the mind, it's not the intelligence, it's the Atma, with love, motivation, determination. And those are the real principles behind it. So, dealing with Jung and all these things, we organized in South America different programs, and one of our strongest programs was with the, we mentioned yesterday, was with the National Library. Step after step. I can find this or not. I guess I can't. Somewhere in hiding. Okay. So we did programs with the National Library. Big area. They have, very, very tremendously old books and everything else. Pretty powerful organization. So the first one was, the first time we got in the basement. First we did it in a big cultural center. They liked us, and we got in the basement of the library, and it was a good, nice basement. And then the director and people saw what kind of people were coming. He said, next year you got to be up in the main auditorium. So that was 3 years ago. So when we were in the basement, I was wondering, what can I present? Because there's so many different things, and how to relate to these people, and how to present the idea. And then in the morning class in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada was talking about the chakras and everything else. And then I realized this is exactly what Jung gave a series of lectures called Kundalini Yoga in Switzerland. And he had one other guy who was a Methodist who'd also been studying this in India. He had gone to India as a Methodist preacher to convert the Hindus to Christianity. He didn't get converted to Hinduism, but he had a lot more respect for it after he went there and investigated it. So he was talking with Jung about the Kundalini yogas and the chakras and Shimshastras. And then the purport was talking about the same thing. Okay, so I just took Prabhupada's strategy and then applied it. Totally effective. You got to know people. If you want to preach to people, you got to listen to them. You got to understand what is their language, what is their area, and be able to really, communicate with them. So we're still investigating this whole thing. We discovered there are magazines available. There are still psychoanalysts. If you want to see a psychologist, if you can see a Jungian psychologist, it may be very good. It's a whole history. One of the most central aspects of the whole Jungian culture now is the Philemon Foundation. Shonu Shamdashani. He was Indian, obviously, from Singapore. And he was looking for God, everything else. And he wondered why psychology was in such a mess. Then he came in contact with Jung and said, I can dedicate my life to this. So now he's a professor of the history of medicine at the University of London. And he's a really good historian, very good person. I'm trying to get in touch with him and talk with him. So he's the person who's taking untranslated works by Jung. I was mentioning how at this time letters were full essays and stuff. So these things are just coming up, totally unedited, unpublished materials. And a lot of this stuff also wasn't even edited properly and so on. So there's a lot of original things that are coming out, like the Kundalini lectures. He did historian's work. He found the letters that were kept before the thing and afterwards. He found the programs, who was involved. There were two stenographers taking shorthand. He found Jung's notes on the thing. He found Bueller's notes. Then he reconstructed the thing like that. So on, And so Jung is talking about the movement, Prabhupada too. And people in West, they relate to this, okay? So Bhakti Yoga is kind of up there, First Prabhupada talks about it too, okay? So there's the Muladhara chakra, right? The Muladhara chakra. Yeah. It relates to three things. Urinating, defecating, and copulating, okay? You do any of these three things in public, you'll be arrested, right? Yeah, they're considered, okay. Some you go to the stomach, solar plexus, heart, up like that and so on. So Jung was saying, different people are on different levels of consciousness, and you can match it up very much with our analysis of Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, like that. It's just you can match it up like that. It's the same thing. People are just describing it in different ways. So he was saying different people, different communities are on different levels and different individuals, and maybe you're 80% in your Muladhara chakra and 2% in your Brahmanda, and you go around a heavy construction worker, and you go home and slap your wife and have sex with her, and and she bites you and sticks you with a knife, and you kick your kids, and you laugh with them, it's like an animal, and stuff. Okay, it's guy's level of work and stuff. It's where he's at, So, where are you? Are you like this or like that, or it's different levels of cathexis or energizing attention in different chakras. So he's talking about that. He says, we Swiss people don't like to talk about anything below the diaphragm. But he said, Germans, they get right into it. It's a good essen, The Swiss people, good food, And we Swiss people go, oh my goodness, we're talking about the stomach, Yeah. So different levels of consciousness. He's going up, and you can match it to our culture, and you say, oh, okay. And we have more details and so on, many times like that. And sometimes Jung also, he's giving ideas and stuff which, not mentioned in the Bhagavatam, which are valid because he's experiencing it directly and so on. So he's going higher. And finally he comes up to the level of basically like the throat or something, which is space. Now he says that this level is where spirituality begins. Well, it doesn't. But that was about where he was, for him it was spiritual. He said at this level, about the only thing we can talk about maybe is fences. Yeah, sound creates space. So he was experiencing it. He was actually talking about this and stuff. And it goes higher, and then we talk at the Brahmarandra, maybe Brahma Loka, and the whole body and so on. So this way, trying to match up, different people and attract them to our resources. At the same time, take advantage of what they have to contribute. Because again, Jung was describing these things from a self-realized point of view. He's saying somebody may come to the level of manomaya. Then everybody, how you comb your hair and how you do things and how you dress and how you sit, that's it. That's the ultimate reality in society, and the king and the queen come in like this and you follow like this and that. It's all mental platform, not even intellectual. But it isn't all that important. But he says you be careful when you're dealing with people, because if you point out to them it's not all that important, some of them will go up. Some of them will fall back down to bestial activity and so on. So sometimes yes, you're right. It's all very important. Keep on coming. Yeah. So very realized comments. Some devotees who like this area. It's like, devotees who are cooking. You read different cookbooks and stuff, and get ideas and stuff. And so on. How to cook, different instruments. The kitchen is, how technical is this kitchen? It's incredibly technical. So many machines, you can chop your hand right off there. I know what you're doing and stuff. Yeah. So we take maya tatamidam sarvam. We take advantage of these things. And different people and different kinds of cultures. And myself, I'm attracted to some degree like that. What else are you mentioning here? So we're organizing these conferences in Peru. Peru is a very nice place to organize it. Every place has its advantages for preaching. In North America is very innovative. It's kind of new ideas are like, there. Other cultures, it's probably America's a place of mostly of innovation. Other cultures are more traditional and classic and so on. Other cultures, Germans are very mechanistic. Practically speaking, almost none of the books we have in America or even here you could sell in Germany. Because if it's a valuable book, that means it has to have a valuable binding, right? If the Bhagavad Gita is worth that much, then it should have like a $25 binding to it. So there's different cultures. One time, there was a guy, Chakravarti, he came with Hansabuddha to Berkeley, and he was telling us like about Sankirtan preaching in Germany. They used to have assigned lines for everybody for their japa. This is your line. You go back and forth, back and forth. Yeah. I finished my rounds, Prabhu. Okay, so on. He said one time he saw Maharam. He was like Hansabuddha's, commander-in-chief of book distribution. The Autobahn, the freeways there is unlimited speed. So this guy would go right out in the middle of the Autobahn and stand in the freeway with his hand like this. And Mercedes would be slowing down from 200 kilometers per hour, braking. He would just stand there and braking, stopping right in front of him. And he'd walk around and say, I have something important to tell you. I said, yes, I can see. Yeah. So one time he saw him preaching to this young German guy about the same age he was. The guy started arguing, he started pushing each other, he started hitting each other in the face. And then finally the guy bought the book. Yes. I can see you. You're talking. Okay, thank you. Yeah. It was good. I'm convinced. I'm glad to sell you this book. Yes. Yeah. So Peru has been very, very effective because it is a country of the middle ground. Our big professor, Dimitri Katsikis, friend, he's from Greece, and Greece is also a country of the middle ground. They're in between the Orient and the Occident. Other people, totally independent ourselves, make the same comment about Peru. If you go around Argentina, you'll find a pizzeria on every corner. So much Italian influence. They got big noses, like the Romans, Yeah. But if you go to Peru, you find a chifa, Wang Hong chifa, Gofo chifa, and it's all these Chinese restaurants. The biggest chain of supermarkets is Iwang. Fujimura, born there, was the president for a long time. So very, very much Oriental Chinese influence. And even you go back to the original culture with the Inca culture and so on also, they're using pulse for their indigenous medicine. So we bring Ayurvedic books there, it's just like, they relate to them right away and stuff, and maybe even produce something incredible, because their pharmacology in the Amazon is unbelievable. More variety of insects in one tree in the Amazon than there is in all of Europe, like that. These trees are big, I don't know, 30 meters tall, so on. It's unbelievable. So another thing, of course, is the philosophy, the culture, the attitude. So it's right in between, because from there, from there actually what you do is you go right to Mexico and to the United States. Mexico is a suburb of Los Angeles. It's just so connected. But from there you can slide back into Peru. And in Peru, these ideas develop, of these subtle bodies are real, just as real as the gross bodies. Some species, they're covered by a false ego. They're covered by a certain body of perspectives, attitudes, which goes with that body. And they're covered by a certain body of mentality, right? And they occupy a certain space, but they have no permanent tactile body, no permanent olfactory or so-and-so body. So you can, sometimes, ghosts, we say, but there's so many, we see ghosts, this is ignorance. Bhutas, Pretas, Kushmandas, Vinayakas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, Gandharvas, Kinnaras, so many subtle things. It's trying to convince a cockroach about, hey, there's horses, people, humans, cows, birds, everything else. They're all ghosts, Yeah. So to the semi-demigods like the Gandharvas and the fairies, we look like rats, And to the real demigods like Indra, we look like cockroaches. To Brahma, we look like atoms and molecules. So the same way, there's different levels and species of life going on, real. So these subtle bodies are real. They're actually factual. There are Kinnaras, there are these people. And so many contact them with ghosts, right? And of course, in our culture, we just eliminate it. Make everything totally sterile and try and leave these things all together. They don't exist. Different levels, and appreciate that the sense of hearing is subtler than the sense of touch. We did the whole program with architecture one time in Vastu. The whole presentation for 4 days, graduate students, and the devotees had prasadam. And right in the middle of the prasadam, the director stopped everything and said, wait a second. What you're telling me is I'm not these eyes. I'm these ears. Right? It's a step up. Architect trying to view everything and what it looks like. No, you got to feel it. Right? That's what makes a difference. And beyond that, acoustical perspection of space being created by your thing. As the sunlight's going through your building, how does it change the space? How is it producing a song and stuff like that and so on? Every day the Eiffel Tower, he built the whole thing. It's an incredible landmark in the development of science and engineering. Everything was prefabricated. It had to fit exactly, and it went there. But he forgot the fact that the thing is made of iron. So when the sun comes up in the morning, what happens with iron?
One side will stretch.
It heats up, so it pulls away, and by the other day it goes back. So you look at it, I forgot what it is, maybe about this much space in the top or something. So every day the thing is going like this, like that and so on. So many subtle forces, going on. And sound is the most subtle, and if we can enter into things through sound and stay on that level, acoustical level. Prabhupada says I'm talking in the microphone, it's going around the world 6 times a minute. So I investigated, it's the speed of light. So we are producing gross sound, like that. The kirtan can be on a totally external level, or you can see how it's actually touching your prana, right? And actually touching something interior like that. The word spirit means prana, respiration, breathing, and so on. The Holy Spirit. That's as high as they can appreciate it. It's when you start to get some internal movement. Then it goes different levels like that, and so on. So matching these with the Jung's levels and taking people higher. So, so Peru. For example, many people have these experiences, and this is part of the culture. Right in the middle of Lima is one building. It's like one block, and the bottom is like lunch counters for working people and cigar shops and all this kind of stuff you find in any downtown city. And the top is all gutted building. There's just nothing there but open windows. It's called Casamatu Sita. You know this? ¿Conoce? Casamatu Sita. Para pasar una noche en Casamatu Sita, usted? No? Famous haunted house. So one time we were doing a program, and many Peruvian scientists there, and they took, studied at MIT and Sorbonne, and they're coming back now to Peru, and they're a little bit skeptical about this description of Sankhya and different things. So I was a little frustrated. I said, well, how many of you would spend one night in Casamatu Sita? And they're all kind of smiling and going, no. We may be scientists and everything else, but we're not fools. Maybe some gravity thing or something else like that there, but yeah, there's something there, and we're not going to consciously offend a shaman from the Andes, like that and stuff. There's still a lot of suspicion that maybe these things are true, and some people, yeah, they are true, and they're dealing with different kinds of subtle beings. Okay. So, what's his name? So one reporter, when I first came there, he said, we modern scientific people don't believe in ghosts, everything else. We Peruvians have to get beyond this. I'm going to spend a whole night there, nothing will happen. So the sun came up, he didn't come out. After a while, when it gets enough sunlight, some people went in and grabbed him. It was totally nuts. Completely took him to a mental hospital. After a few days, he kind of came back, back like that and so on. You know Chiteshwar from Orissa? Chiteshwar Das. He's our ISKCON Ghostbuster. He's a disciple of Jayapataka Maharaj. So his family are tantrics. Their Istadevata is Panchamukha Hanuman. Hanuman with 5 faces, Nisringadev, Hayagriva. Hanuman got this benediction, saving Ram, and using the Shakti of all these avatars, that this form will always be very ferocious and frightening, to the demons. So I met him, we talking about things. And okay, funny. He said, yeah, about almost half of what I'm doing is showmanship, just to it's better than television. I do this and that, blow in this and touch your nose and stuff. He said, the rest of it, no, it's real. We're dealing with things. One time he was exorcising, one time when Janananda, Janananda? Actually, he was here. He was in somewhere in Australia. Janananda is a very sober guy, right? I'm a very literal guy. So one time Chiteshwar was here in Australia. There's one Bhakta who was kind of crazy, haunted, or whatever. And they asked him, can you exorcise this guy? And he said, well, yeah, we can do it and stuff, but who's his closest authority? Well, this Bhakta leader, like that. Why do you ask? Because when the ghost leaves, it's going to attack his closest authority. Well, don't worry, he's in Brisbane driving a van back from there. And I said, it's not the physical distance, it's the psychological and emotional distance, like that. What kind of guy is this Janananda guy? Very hard-minded. Okay, we'll go ahead and drive. So Janananda told me, he was driving the van back, a little bit of rain. At a certain point, about 12 o'clock, he noticed certain kind of weird faces appearing in the back of trucks in the shadow and stuff, Then he started feeling this cold sensation in his feet coming up. He started chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It went away, It would come again, he started chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And he thought, let it come up higher. This is not a good idea. So let it come up higher, and he would chant. And it lasted maybe about 15 minutes, and finally it stopped. And he got back, and that was exactly the time that Chiteshwar was exorcising this guy, and it worked. The guy was normal. Yeah. So the subtle world exists. And so Jung was investigating these things, and his perspective was that, yeah, there is a subtle world, and it influences how we deal with it. It's not just the mind; it's also in the heart, like this. And he went to China, he went to India, not China, India, Africa, and America. There's so much investigation of all these cultures. I guess he came back from many very weird experiences with other people. So finally he came back, I think it was to Switzerland from India. And while he was in India, he was at the University of Calcutta. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was there at the same time. He was talking to people about the culture and everything else. He got 5 honorary doctorates. And then Mark Twain also went there. Mark Twain went around the world. His experiences in India are very interesting. He said, India is that place that once you've seen it, you won't trade it for all the circuses in the world. India is that place. It's so interesting and full of variety. You won't trade your experiences for all the circuses in the world. He said, in religion, India is the only millionaire. Right? India is the only millionaire. So people, big Western authorities and stuff, yeah, appreciating it. You know. So he came back and he had a heart attack, almost died. He had an out-of-body experience. He went way up above the earth like that and so on. And later on, he did talk to some astronomers, and he said probably would have to have been probably about 15,000 feet or 25,000, more than that, 30,000 feet, more than that even. Something, because he could see Europe there. He was kind of like in the middle, over the Middle East, Europe. Other side was India, like that and there, so on. And he understood that, yeah, India is the solution, but I'm not ready for it, and the world's not ready for it yet. In the Kundalini lectures, he's talking about these things and how we have to develop our own understanding of these things. And we shouldn't take the Indian things. Why? He said, don't think it's because they don't know. We're not minimizing them. It's because trying to adopt these ideas now in the West, 1930 or something, would probably not only be useless, but maybe even dangerous. So Hitler took them, and now the most hated and feared symbol in the world is the symbol of good fortune. Yeah. And Aryans are considered like the most horrible culture in the world. So Jung was completely right. It wasn't the time to introduce it at that time. I think even he himself. So in this out-of-body experience, he was reading his body. He came down in India, and there was this stupa or something. More into Buddhism, it was more rational. He walked up the steps. It was a very beautiful marble place, and there was a yogi sitting there, and with all these little lamps in the place like that. And then the yogi kind of did like this. There's a door. He would approach that door. It was like an inner temple. He knew when he got there, he would understand all these things about who he was on a subtle level, and how he'd come back down into this world, who he was before, and who his people were, and this connection like that and so on. But then all of a sudden, his doctor stood in front of him in the dream and the experience. I call it a dream. And told him, Jung, you can't leave yet. Well, why not? Too many people in Europe want you. They need you. No, they can take care of themselves. No, you can't leave. So finally the doctor stopped him, and he came back, and he said he came back into his body, and it was a terrible experience coming back in both bodies. It was like coming back into a box, locked into this box. So many different experiences like that. Then his doctor was coming in and talking to him, and he was weak, and he told him, you got to be careful, because I saw you active in your subtle body. So be very careful, because it's a very dangerous time for you. You could knock off the gross thing. The doctor said, yeah, you calm down, take some more medicine. About 3 days later, the doctor died. It's like, I can go on, unlimited experiences like this. And it's like people who read the biography again, his biography is just like some intelligence, you realize, yeah, there's a lot of evidence for what these guys are talking about, this subtle world and so on. So, what is it going on? Maybe then India, the out-of-body experiences, different things, American Indians. So, one time somebody asked him, when he was talking about God, he said, do you believe in God? Now, some people say they believe in God. Why? Because I go to church, I do the ritual, I do the ritual, and I venerate the paraphernalia. And that's it. Karma yoga. The paraphernalia, the rituals, the activity, okay, and so on. And I'm religious. I'm a Christian. I'm a Muslim. I'm whatever. But that's just very superficial. And beyond that is I understand what I'm doing. So jnana yoga. And some people have a good developed understanding of Christianity and things like that, intellectual. And beyond that is dhyan, where we actually learn this thing of going beyond the mind into the iconographics, meditation, contemplation. And then we start to ask the same question, is there a God? Because you're with him. You're experiencing his association, seeing his hand and things like that. So that was pretty much, we can analyze Jung's development. And so he said, I don't know if there's a God or not. Now, his not knowing is a big difference than somebody on a gross level. But it's something anybody who calls him a psychologist has to investigate. If you call yourself a psychologist, his point is you're not a psychologist unless you're asking this question. So he said, I don't know if there's a God or not, but I do know that if you don't believe in God, you'll go crazy. Right? This is a pragmatic thing. So on. And something crazy means you just eat yourself to death with potato chips and television and sex and all this kind of stuff. You just basically kill yourself. Some people walking around dead people. They can do a simple job and we'll go home and everything else and just some sex, basically one guy told me if you can control marijuana and beer, you can control this country. Because it's 90% of the people go home and they have to have a little bit of mild intoxication. They learn how to dose themselves just properly, buy some pizza, watch the new video, and they go back to work. Yeah? They retire, they die within 5 years after retirement, and that's it. That's their life. So you'll do that, because these big questions are just too much, unless God is there. So he was saying this is a pragmatic fact. You had to believe in God. But then there are ways to deal with that and so on. So very, very high levels of questioning. Very effective area of preaching. Yeah. One time in Buenos Aires, one devotee was a psychologist. He said, I can arrange a lecture for you at my mental health center. And maybe like 600 people were, clients there. And maybe like 30 psychologists, social workers, women, men. And these are people who are dealing with, these ladies are used to dealing with women who are on drugs and using prostitution to get money, who are lying to their family, and lying to the psychologists and everything else. So you're used to dealing with people on this mental level like that and stuff, So you come in and start talking about Krishna consciousness. Hare Bol, something. No, they're looking at you. This person really, just lying to himself and lying to me. It's very challenging to deal with these people and be honest about how much you actually know and don't know. But afterwards, they bought like 4 to 5 books each person. So 4 or 5 books each one. So it's many different areas for preaching and stuff, and find your area, your way of doing it. Prabhupada told Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, every scientist, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you make a devotee is worth 1,000 ordinary people. But the experience is it takes 1,000 times longer to make one scientist into a devotee. So go out and distribute books to 1,000 devoted people and make them, or else, it's the same thing. Preach to the army or preach to the officers. You've got to have both. Right? So we're broad range preaching program. Find your nature, your area, your people. One more point here I was going to bring up. Okay, Jung. India. In his biography, he was there describing his experience. And what we want to do, because Dr. Bhaktivedanta said, if you can just tell me what department sponsored his lectures, then we go through and dig it out. We can probably find the transcripts of the lectures and everything else. And Shoner Shamdashini now is going from Europe. He's turning on Africa first, trying to convince him, no, turn on India first and do the research and all these things and start recreating his experiences there. For example, he was talking to these professors and stuff who were hosting him about things. Then he saw some sadhus, some yogi guys sitting there by the side of the road, and he said, I'm not going to talk to them. Because if I do, all I'm going to do is intellectualize everything that they're giving me. And I'll actually contaminate my ability to actually enter into their techniques and their meditation and stuff. I'm not ready for that. So he was very intelligent, but he realized there's a different level to this, and I'm not really ready for it yet, in the level they're doing it. His technique, again, was art. It's very good, visual art, but we're telling him higher than that is singing and dancing, what we do. And he had a technique of introspective imagination. It's called creative imagination, which other people have also developed. One guy in Egypt was doing it. You sit down and you let your mind go. And many times you'll find that your mind actually goes a certain way. And it may go through the same thing again and again. You may have the same dreams again and again. You can start looking at what the dream means and so on. And you can find them in very fundamental, archetypes. These are part of our root. We have our archetypes, things that kick us off. There's something you always we do what you want to do. Certain kind of girl, forget it. It's like, certain kind of guy, poop, big mustache, okay. There's certain things that just kick in and we don't even know why it is. It's just there are certain things that motivate us, and we're vulnerable. If we're chanting from this level and dealing with these things, then we can protect ourselves. If not, we're just, whatever you smell, whatever a dog smells, forget it. He's gone. He's gone. Same way in mind and finding the intelligence, then we can see that I'm really, attracted by these things. Yep. And again, icons. I was talking about the biggest American icon, James Bond. He's been going since I was in high school. I think when the second movie came out, whatever it was, From Russia with Love. The first one was the very first one about Jamaica. Like that, But so many actors have gone through the role and stuff. James Bond has killed like something like 1,500 people or something, or and 15,000 people have tried to kill him, standing right in front of him with an AK-47 blasting away. They can't kill him. Yeah, he's had sexual relations with over 150 women, and so on. So these are kind of the qualifications of God, right? And again, he's not an American; he's British. Canada and Australia have this heritage of British culture. We're a part of this culture. America had this genocide, what's it called? Patricide. They broke their culture and everything else. So they can't claim to be like, we broke it. So therefore they want something. So James Bond gives it to them. He's British. They get this kind of pseudo-British, culture to him and stuff. So you analyze these things. Why is it there? You see, it's because they had this whole history. And Americans don't have that. They don't have this sense of, basically the sense of what's medieval history, where other cultures have it and so on. Okay, that's where they're going to act a certain way. Creative, innovative. When America was formed, I'll finish here, Alexis de Tocqueville, big French sociologist, he traveled around America after it was formed with the new constitution, the political philosophy. And he said, this country is based upon ontological individualism, that the individual is the ultimate reality. Other places not, the society, whatever. He said, this will be the salvation and damnation of this country. In Germany, once you get the Third Reich going, everybody joins. Because that's what we do, is the society thing. In America, no, they'll think for themselves, But simultaneously, when you try to get people to act as if in America, they won't do it, One, Bhaktivedanta, big manager in the medical industry, he decided to take charge of the temple in San Jose and organize the whole thing. After about 2 months, he told me, he said, it's totally different managing in the non-profit sector than the profit sector, and totally different than that, managing in the religious sector. He said, managing an ISKCON is like herding cats. Herding cats, Yeah. He said, devotees, but when you can motivate them, you can't pay people to do this. There's no way on earth people would do it for money. So it's a whole different motivational environment and so on. And that's what you're trying to understand. Meet people. You can, what is it, in Russia? You get off a bus in Russia, out in the country, your Sankirtan bus, get out like this, and everybody's like looking at you like guard dogs and stuff, ready to maybe jump on you and attack you. So right away they pull out the accordion and start singing like in a Russian folk song and dancing, and everybody, yes, babushka, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. What's your book? What's your philosophy? Yeah, put it in their language, scientific presentation, right? You got to do everything in a scientific perspective. So, any questions or comments? If you want to get involved, we have our webpage, jayarama.us, and we're developing our public program, Neos Nimbus. We're developing this stuff. It's a whole, you can see it's a whole area of developing. And it's good results, and people come to the program, read the books, join the temple, and become big book distributors. We've done a lot of people coming out of this and stuff. But yes, sir. It's time to quit. 7:30, 8:30.
I think if my memory serves me right, Carl Jung said that most of the problems in the world are spiritual problems, are rooted in...
Yeah. But what does he mean by spirit?
Yeah, that's my question.
The word spirit, again, means prana. One time I was in Berkeley, I was walking around in the afternoon, chatting my rounds like that. And we used to go by Peter Ralston's Kung Fu studio, Actually, Kung Fu, Pakwa, and Sheni he was teaching. This movie, Bloodsport, any karate guys here? With what's the Kurt Von Damme?
Yeah.
Bloodsport, It's about this international competition in Asia. About every 6 years they have this competition, this quasi-secret thing, and you invite all the big, heavy martial art guys. Before it was full contact with no pulling the punches, and deaths and maimings were frequent. So now they got to the point where they can pull the punches and stuff. It's kind of like the Olympics of martial arts. So Peter Ralston won it one year, this guy, so on. And he had a studio in Berkeley and stuff. So I used to walk by and look in the window. And there's this thing where you push the people's hands and you try and get to the person to move his feet and stuff, So he was facing the person. He would go all the way back like this, like that, right? You can't do that and come back up again. Literally, I watched this guy go, come back up again. You go with somebody, finally would let go. The person would fly like, 8 feet through the air. One devotee, Janardhan Das, he was heavy brahmachari and some Radha Damodar. He was a wrestler in college, so he went to study there. He told me one time in the beginning, Peter Rawson had like 6 guys like him, like heavy, young, healthy guys surround him and say, okay, when I say go, you all jump me. So they attacked him. It was 1001, less than 2 seconds. All 6 of them were on the ground. It took a second to recover their breath. 6 guys. So he's a magician. And so I was funny one time I came in, I was talking to one of his students, and what's your philosophy of nature? Because it's Oriental, Chinese. He said, there's 5 elements. Earth, water, fire, wood, and paper. What did I say? What about air? In Chinese martial arts philosophy, air is all pervasive and like God. So that's there. And they can do it, they can prove it. So that in Western word, the actual word spirit, you breathe, it means like that. And that's their level of realization when they're talking about the Holy Spirit. It was moving in me. It's prana level. Yeah. Okay, at least we get that maybe in the kirtan rather than a gross thing. Other one is sometimes the word soul is translated as a translation of the word psyche. Yeah. The philosopher is the midwife of the mind, where the word for it is psyche. So psyche then is talking about the subtle body. So practically speaking, in Jewish, Christian, Judaic tradition, there's almost no word for what we're talking about. That's something one Jewish guy said, we reincarnation, vegetarian. He said, but for us, it's like a coffee cup, a styrofoam cup. You pour the coffee out and it's gone, the spirit's gone. But a little bit's always kind of a few drops hanging there. And so we don't burn the body because there's some spirit is still in it. But we're like analytical, no, it can be completely separated and so on. We have a process. Yeah? So generally speaking, that's what the prana and spirit, different levels of development. But he was coming up to the level, as far as I can tell, directly of space. And the sun and his experiences of the psychological elements was from here. Not from here or here or, and so on. Yeah. And sometimes very, he's having out-of-body experiences. And then trying to put it all and catalog it. And then after when he was dying, he said, this is the Jungian, Jung knows it all, this is the philosophy. He hated that. He said, I know maybe 10% I figured out what's going on. If you take anything from me, it's courage and honesty. There's some tools, But then that's why Wolfgang Pauli gave up on Jungian tradition, because he was just making everything. 7 cities plied for the body of Homer dead, through which the living Homer begged his bread. When he was alive, no guy nothing. But when he's dead, okay, now we can make a tomb out of him. We can. So that was the whole thing. It's Jungian. Many Jungian psychologists you'll find out have fallen into this thing of Jung knows it all. Nothing else is need to be done. But Jung himself said this is all so much provisional. You ask them if Jung was here now, would he smoke a pipe? They stop and think, and they say, no. Yeah, he himself would have understood tobacco is not good and everything else. So you're dealing with them. And there are branches of healthy people that are making progress and stuff. So on. So, and if you can get them, in the 4 Kumaras, they became Paramahamsas immediately. All it took us one sniff. Sukadeva Goswami and Śrīmad Bhāgavatam became Paramahamsa. So in that sense, if you get people like that, they can become great devotees right away.
So what is holding them back now if they've made already so much progress in their previous, in the journey so far?
Yeah.
If they've made so much progress, what is holding them back now in their present life?
The same thing is holding us back on our lower thing, ultimately, is the false egos, free will. We have free will, choice. So at any level, you have to make these choices of, you can imagine walking around like this, and you knowing people, whenever you meet everybody and start talking to them, you can just penetrate right into this guy's mind and find out things and, and have a very powerful influence on people. People are heavy. Some of them are demons. You're gonna get your Krishna consciousness challenged in a very heavy way, stuff. And, well, why do you think that? Maybe it's, you start to see, So Ravana was a big guy, right? Yeah. So same thing, free will is there at every level. And the Bhagavatam is talking about these things. The Bhagavatam relates to people at all these different levels and so on. And there are fall downs at every level. Okay?
Another thing that,
What is your good name?
Say it again?
Huh?
say?
Your name?
Oh, my name is Max.
Max, okay. That's a good name. Mine's Hanumat. Yeah.
Well, you say another thing that might be holding us back is the understanding of the shadow self as well? Or is that just something that...
Well, now, see, it's the whole point of getting the terminology of what Jung was talking about into the West and stuff, you know. And some of it's just very directly, but other stuff, the shadow, and also Jung was changing his ideas as he was going on, you know. The shadow self, in some ways, would be the ahankara we're talking about, and so on. So yeah, that's it. In some ways that we enjoy, you know, manipulating the shadow self without having to come to our full responsibilities. And that's what Jung's thing is this same thing, is that Freud was just kind of analyzing everything else, didn't look at the patient. He said, no, you look at the patient. You have a moral responsibility and these kind of things, where Freudian psychology eliminates all moral responsibility. One guy came to Jung, this and that, he analyzed this whole thing, but Jung said, the reason you're having this problem is because you're living like a pig. This poor old lady who was a 35-year-old spinster, she's, you know, fallen in love with you, and she's giving you all your money so you can live on the Riviera while she's working like a slave for you. Until you actually go and take care of that, you're going to have the same psychosis and this problem and stuff. And it's a moral problem, you know? Yeah. So the same way is that the shadow self, again, you know, is just, you know, I want to enjoy the shadow. You know? In the shadow, there's no real clarity about these things, you know? Yeah, yeah. And some psychologist comes along and illuminates behind the shadow is a real self. Yeah, yeah. And then you got to, one of the biggest, vitaraga bhaya krodha, fear. Fear is when you start to realize I have these responsibilities, and ultimately I have free will the same as God. I'm small, but He's given me, and you're not going to mess around with my life. It's frightening. Oh, no, I'm responsible for my life. Oh, yes, yeah. But then you can do things that even God is like surprised and amused and stuff. Really, not just like pretending. It's like little kid has free will. Can do things that even the parents and adults are just like, you know, touched. Yeah. Yeah. So.
When were you at Berkeley?
I graduated was 1970.
So you were there during the free speech movement?
Oh, the whole thing. Yeah. So it was a big. You know, Marshall McLuhan said war is education, and so it was. It was just a whole. I mean, the Vietnam War proved that the entire American military-industrial complex could be dissolved piece by piece with nothing bigger than a 4-inch mortar. And so that was like their war. And also they discovered actually that they analyzed, you know, the Art of War, this book, yeah. They analyzed all the Vietnam thing, and so many of the fundamental principles were being applied. And then when they signed the peace treaty or whatever it was, the American guy was saying, you never defeated us on any battlefield. And the Vietnamese general laughed and said, you never knew where the battle was. And they didn't understand, if we undermine their resources and everything else, you know, it was the people. So it was a big encounter with political science, you know, and all this stuff. And then, of course, all these yogis were coming and everything else, you know. And I would say about 70% of the hippie revolution was based upon Jung's ideas with, you know, it was Abbie Hoffman, and all these people were referring to Jung and everything else. So Prabhupada, when he came, that's created the ambience, you know, where these ideas could be appreciated and so on. It was a big, Prabhupada came at that time. It was a big opportunity. And after that, it kind of closed down again. People tried, and then I was suspicious, you'll see the number of people in the ISKCON temples was decreasing before Prabhupada left. It already peaked and gone down. It wasn't because Prabhupada left, everything fell apart. No, it was already because it was just this ambient. People were, it's not going to work, back to work, you know, this matter is real, this quadratic thinking is the way to think, you know, like that. Yeah. So it happens, you know, by karma. I suppose a certain time the mode of goodness becomes prominent, and people can, and so we look for that, you know, and just, right, catch the wave. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Back home, back to Godhead. All success with your preaching, Sankirtan. Yes. Om Namo